This is the solution guide to the 5th worksheet covering passages and questions typically found on the English section of the ACT exam. The passage on this 5th worksheet is a passage titled The Birdman of Bryant Park. Now, before answering the questions on these worksheets or on the test itself, it's usually a good idea to at least skim the passage and get a rough idea of what this passage is about, so we can better understand the context in which these questions are being asked. This particular passage is about Nikola Tesla, how he was the Birdman of Bryant Park, and how he invented many of the important things that we use today. Now that we know what this passage is about, let's move on to the questions. Question 1 is asking just about these two words right here, Bryant Park. Now our choices for question 1 are to leave it the way it is, to capitalize Bryant and to add a comma, to just capitalize Bryant, or to capitalize both Bryant and Park and add the comma. Well, Bryant Park is a name, so it's a proper noun. So I believe that both Bryant and Park should both be capitalized. And the only answer we have that does that is answer D. But before we select answer D, let's make sure that we want this comma here as well. As he had almost every day and night for the past several years, a middle-aged man strode into Bryant Park, a small green square behind New York City's magnificent public library. Now this here is all an explanation of what Bryant Park is. So we could omit all of this stuff, and this sentence would still make sense. As he had almost every day and night for the past several years, a middle-aged man strode into Bryant Park. We could end that sentence there if we wanted to. And because we could end that sentence there, we probably should put a comma there. So we do want the comma after Park, and D is our best answer. Question 2 comes in the first word of the very next sentence. It's about this word shrewdly. Shrewdly, it turned out, as was his custom, his 6-foot 2-inch frame, strikingly gaunt but always noble, was draped in a black tailcoat and trousers, topped by a black bowler hat. Now we can leave shrewdly there. We can replace it with immaculately, or astutely, or immensely. Now typically shrewdly means something close to intelligent, or observant, or wise. But this sentence is talking about how he's dressed. And he's dressed up. He's wearing a black tailcoat and trousers. So, is he intelligently dressed? Or is he immaculately dressed, which would be perfectly dressed or dressed up, astutely dressed, which again is observant, or immensely, large or important? Immensely turned out, astutely turned out, immaculately turned out, or shrewdly turned out. Turned out is being used to show that he is dressed up. So is he wisely dressed up, perfectly dressed up, observantly dressed up, or greatly dressed up? I would say that he's perfectly dressed up, because when you're getting dressed up, you want to look good. So our best answer for question 2 is probably B. Question 3 comes in the very next sentence again. Beneath the coat he sported a waistcoat, a crisp white shirt, and a bow tie. Now we're going to take this beneath the coat, or just the beneath the, and we're going to leave it the way it is, or we're going to replace it with as well beneath the coat, therefore beneath the coat, and beneath the coat. Well, it's generally not proper to start your sentence with a preposition. So I'm going to say that D is probably incorrect. Therefore tells us that this sentence is because of the previous sentence. So the previous sentence is talking about how he's dressed, and so is this sentence. So this second sentence doesn't really explain why the previous sentence. So therefore it doesn't really work. I'm going to say that C is also wrong. B as well beneath the coat he sported a waistcoat. And that works. That would be grammatically correct. But I don't think there's anything wrong with not using the as well and just starting with the beneath the. So we have to choose between A and B. Well, generally on this exam, you shouldn't let other answers convince you that no change is the wrong answer. When we're writing, we want to be concise. So this as well really does nothing for this sentence. So instead of choosing B, for question 3, let's choose A as our best answer. Now further on in the same sentence, question 4 can be found. And it's asking what happens if we take this entire underlined passage and remove it. What are we going to lose if the sentence ends there? Is "and a brown paper bag full of breadcrumbs" a transition into the following paragraph, an insight into the quiet life of the man in the article, information about what the man fed the pigeons, or details about what the man carried with him? Well, he is carrying a brown bag full of breadcrumbs. He's probably carrying this paper bag full of breadcrumbs to feed them to the pigeons. If he feeds the pigeons a lot, he might have a quiet life. And is this a transition into the following paragraph? Well, if we look at the next paragraph, it starts talking about him feeding pigeons. The previous paragraph was just how he was dressed. So really the previous paragraph had nothing to do with feeding pigeons. It just tells us that he was dressed up and then ends with that he's carrying a cane and a brown bag full of breadcrumbs. So if you hadn't read the entire passage, you wouldn't have known he was getting ready to feed a bunch of pigeons. So really, since we're moving from how he's dressed into what he's about to do, I would say that this ending of this sentence is probably a transition into the following paragraph. So for question 4, our best answer is most likely A. Now in the second sentence of that following paragraph, we can find question 5. And it's asking about this having smiled and murmuring to the cooing birds, the man stretched out his arms and disappeared under a flurry of gray and white wings. Do we want to replace this having smiled and murmuring to the cooing birds with smiling and having murmured, smiling and murmuring, having smiled and murmured? The problem with what's already written is that this is present tense, this is past tense, and then this is present tense again. So this sentence doesn't really flow correctly. Having smiled and murmuring. So let's try replacing this with these 3 other options. Smiling and having murmured to the cooing birds, the man stretched out his arms and disappeared. Maybe, again we have an ing, an ing, and then an ed. Present, present, and then a past tense. So I don't really like B. It sounds awkward. So let's move on to C. Smiling and murmuring to the cooing birds, the man stretched out his arms and disappeared. This one sounds much better than B, but let's check D as well. Having smiled and murmured to the cooing birds, the man stretched out his arms and disappeared under a flurry of gray and white wings. Well, that kind of works too. So now we have to choose between C and D. Based on which one sounds better, I'm going to choose C as our best answer for question 5. Smiling and murmuring to the cooing birds, the man stretched out his arms and disappeared under a flurry of gray and white wings. Question 6 comes in the very next sentence, dressed in tails. Here we're talking about another man, and when we say he's dressed in tails, we're saying that he's also dressed up. Just like the Birdman. The problem is this apostrophe S. This is showing ownership. Tails is owning who urgently bade him away. And that doesn't make sense. So this apostrophe S is wrong. and that eliminates A and B for us. So we're removing the apostrophe because there is no ownership in this sentence. And the only thing different between C and D is this comma. Do we want the comma there? Well, earlier in this sentence, right here, there's another comma. So if we put a comma here, that means that this is sort of a description or an explanation. It also means that we could remove this if we're going to put two commas, and the sentence should still make sense. Well, if we read it without this section, his avian reverie was short-lived, disturbed by the appearance of another man who urgently bade him away. Well, that's a complete sentence. So this really is just an addition to the sentence. It's unnecessary information, but they're giving it to us anyway. They're telling us that this new man is also dressed up. But it's not key to the structure of this sentence. So we do want the comma, and since we do want the comma, answer D is our best answer. Question 7 on our worksheet is asking about the very first word in the next paragraph. Reluctantly, comma, the Birdman of Bryant Park shook himself free and dusted himself down. Now we can leave this as a no change. We can change it to tepidly, hesitantly, or ostentatiously. Well, the title of this article is The Birdman of Bryant Park. So Nikola Tesla is the Birdman, and apparently the birds like him, and he likes the birds. But he's not going to be feeding the birds for long today because he's leaving. It's an important night, and he's going to be awarded a prestigious medal. So while he likes feeding the birds, he can't do it today. So reluctantly seems like it's probably the right answer, but we should always check the others. Now tepidly also kind of means reluctantly. It's without enthusiasm or warmth, might be a better word. Hesitantly means he's doing it, but he's hesitating. And ostentatiously means he's doing it with a lot of grandeur. Well, his only audience is the birds and this other gentleman that accompanies him. So I don't think he's doing this ostentatiously. He might be doing it hesitantly, but he is going to win an award. They can always feed the birds tomorrow. So I don't think hesitantly is probably the right word either. So you got to choose between tepidly and reluctantly. He does like the birds, and he probably does want to receive the medal. So I don't think he's going to do it without a lack of warmth. So for question 7, I'm going to leave reluctantly there and choose no change, or answer A. In the very next sentence, we're asked about an important night. But question 8 asks us which of the following alternatives to the underlined portion would not be acceptable. A significant night, an inconsequential night, a noteworthy night, or a momentous night. Momentous means important. Noteworthy means we're going to remember it. Significant means it's important again. Inconsequential, though, means it's unimportant. It's of no consequence. So this does not also mean important, while the other ones all do. So since we're looking for the one that's not acceptable, for question 8, choose answer B as your best answer. Question 9 comes after this quote, nature and nature's law lay hid in the night, declared Berend in the presentation speech borrowing from Alexander Pope's epitaph to Newton. So we're wondering if we want to replace this word declared. And we can replace it with decried, denounced, or charged. Now, decried and denounce and charge all have a certain negative connotation. Decried and denounce means to condemn openly. Tell the world that this is evil. And charged is similar to being charged with a crime. This here, though, in the presentation speech, is for the award that the Birdman or Nikola Tesla is about to win. So if they're going to give him an award, I don't think they're going to condemn him. Since B, C, and D all have a negative connotation, and this is an award presentation, the only one that makes sense is to leave declared there, because declared has no negative connotation. So for question 9, choose A. Question 10 is in the exact same sentence, and it's asking about this right here, Alexander Pope's epitaph to Newton. Now we can leave this the way it is, or we can capitalize Pope and add an apostrophe and then capitalize Newton. We can capitalize Pope, add the apostrophe, and not capitalize Newton. Or we can just capitalize Newton. Now, Pope is a name, and so is Newton. So these are proper nouns, and they both should be capitalized. And that eliminates answer A, and answer C, and answer D. Now this is Pope's epitaph, so we're showing ownership. Pope owns this epitaph, so we do want the apostrophe. And we've also eliminated all the other answers. So for question 10, the best answer is B. Question 11 is in the next sentence, and it's asking about this quotation. Were we to have seized and eliminated from our industrial world the results of Mr. Tesla's work, the wheels of industry would cease to turn. Our electric cars and trains would stop, our towns would be dark, our mills would be dead and idle. We're thinking about replacing the beginning of this quote by removing the word have, and then changing eliminate from eliminated. Or we can say, were we to seize and eliminate? Or had we all seized and eliminated? Well, let's try replacing these three lines with what's already there. Were we to seize and eliminate from our industrial world the results of Mr. Tesla's work, the wheels of industry would cease to turn, our electric cars and trains would stop, our towns would be dark, our mills would be dead and idle. I don't like that. And the problem is, were we to seized? This is all present tense, and this is past tense. That sounds awkward. It's grammatically incorrect, so B must be wrong. C. Were we to seize and eliminate from our industrial world the results of Mr. Tesla's work, the wheels of industry would cease to turn, our electric cars and trains would stop, our towns would be dark, our mills would be dead and idle. That one sounds pretty good. Everything in this sentence would be the same tense. C flows better than were we to have seized and eliminated. So I like C better than A, so I'm going to eliminate A as well, because I do want to change this to C, but let's see if D is a better answer. Had we all seized and eliminated from our industrial world the results of Mr. Tesla's work? So we're looking at past tense and present tense. Well, we didn't seize and eliminate the results of Mr. Tesla's work. So instead of D, choose the present tense version. And for question 11, C is our best answer. Now question 12 on this worksheet is at the end of this paragraph, but it's a little bit different. It's asking us which of these sentences would reinforce the conclusions presented in the essay and create an effective transition to the next paragraph. Well, this paragraph is talking about the benefits of Tesla's contributions to science. The next paragraph goes on to talk more about his contributions, but how he's relatively less known than other famous inventors. So which of these sentences would fit at the end of this paragraph and transition into that next idea? A. Tesla then went on to receive the Edison Award for the advances in science that his research had brought about. Maybe. That is why Tesla deserved to win the Edison Award. Well, that would explain the rest of this paragraph, but I don't know if it transitions on to the next one. So I'm going to say B is probably incorrect. C. These statements and many more were said about Tesla before he received the award. Well, again, that might fit with this paragraph, but it doesn't offer a transition to the next one. D. It is for that reason that Tesla deserved to be present for the Edison Award. Well, if they're going to give him an award, he probably should be present for the ceremony. This is not a conclusion for this paragraph, and it certainly is not an effective transition to the next one. So if the other three answers are wrong, then our best answer must be A. So for question 12, choose A. Question 3 on this worksheet comes well into the next paragraph, and it asks about this phrase right here, starting the Second Industrial Revolution. We can replace this with a phrase that has no quotation marks. We can also take off the quotation marks and uncapitalize Second Industrial Revolution. Or we can uncapitalize Second Industrial Revolution but leave the quotation marks. Well, you'll only use quotation marks if you're quoting somebody, or if this is a title of a short work, or if you want to set apart these words from the rest of the sentence for some special reason. Now, there was no Second Industrial Revolution, so it's possible that they're intentionally setting these words apart. And if you're going to set these words apart, then you're probably going to capitalize these as an important title in history. So if we leave the quotation marks and we leave these words capitalized, then we would want to choose answer A. So right away, I'm going to say that D is wrong, because if we're going to leave the quotation marks, we probably want to capitalize these letters. C is removing the quotation marks and the capital letters. But notice that it's also removing the comma. We do want this comma here because this sentence is really made up of two ideas. We could end this sentence here. Tesla is often credited with starting the Second Industrial Revolution. That's a complete sentence. And if I remove this but, his genius touched on much more than just motors. That's a complete sentence as well. So we're putting two sentences together with a but, and we definitely need this comma here. So we can't get rid of the comma, so C must be incorrect as well. Now B tells us just to get rid of the quotation marks, but it leaves these capitalized. Well, if we're going to leave them capitalized, we might as well leave the quotation marks. So for 13, A was our correct answer, and choose answer A. Now question 14 is asking us to add a concluding sentence at the end of the passage. And it wants to know which of these sentences would be the best concluding sentence for this passage. A. Tesla's achievements and showmanship demonstrating his experiments made him world famous. B. Tesla has been portrayed in many movies since his death, always as a reclusive genius. C. Unfortunately, Tesla died penniless in the early 1940s, having spent all his money on experiments. Or D. Nikola Tesla was truly a visionary man that brought about significant change in the world. Well, this passage makes no mention of showmanship, so I believe A is probably wrong. We don't want to add any new ideas in a concluding sentence, which would be the same reason why we're going to eliminate answer B. They don't talk about any movies. It also says nothing about his financial situation. D does sound like a good concluding sentence, especially since we're talking about X-ray tubes, fluorescent lighting, robotics, radar, aircraft, missiles, and so on. All of these things did bring about significant change in the world. So for question 14, choose D. Now question 15, the last question on this worksheet, asks about the preceding passage as a whole. Suppose the writer had chosen to write a brief essay summarizing who Nikola Tesla was. Would this essay successfully fulfill the writer's goal? Well, I think so. It talks about him being the Birdman, and then it also talks about several of his successful inventions. So I'm going to say yes is probably the right answer, which will eliminate C and D. Yes, because the essay compares Tesla's inventions to several other inventions from the same time period. Well, it does mention Tesla's inventions, but it doesn't mention any other inventions from the same time period. It does mention other inventors, but not other inventions. So I don't think A is correct. But let's check B. Yes, because the essay briefly outlines both Tesla's oddities and the contributions of Tesla's invention. Well, it does do this, but does it mention any oddities? Well, if you think all the birds liking him in the park is an oddity, then your best answer is answer B. So for the last question on our worksheet, choose B.